When Blake first came to me and told me what he wanted to do, I thought he'd lost his mind. Nobody robs a casino in real life. Not unless they want to go to prison. Even in the movies, people don't get away with it. But the more he talked about it, showing me his blueprints and plans, the more I realized he'd been thinking about this for a long, long time. And his idea was ingenious. If executed correctly, there would be a very good chance at safety and a clean getaway. And he had a man on the inside who had revealed to him the weaknesses in the casino's security systems. Still, I imagined there were plenty of factors he hadn't accounted for. "Yo, that's why I came to you," he said when I pointed that out. "You're the engineer in the family. How would you like to retire at 40, Brian? We'd be so rich, you'd never have to work another day in your life at that soul-crushing job you're always complaining about. Not only that, but this is our chance to make history." That part got to me. Don't ask me why. The whole thing felt like a challenge to my analytical mind, which I couldn't deny. The feat of surpassing a casino security system would be talked about for decades, perhaps even centuries. Books would be written about it, movies would be made, and podcasts would explore the theories on how it was accomplished. "Alright, I'm in," I finally told him after several days of consideration. "But if things start to go sideways, just promise me you'll put a stop to this. I don't want to see either one of us in prison." He just smiled, saying that wasn't going to happen. And he was right. What ended up happening was much, much worse. While Blake worked to assemble a team, I set about doing my end of things. There were so many unknowns right from the start, but the gears in my head were turning, and I was already starting to think of solutions to our problems. As an engineer, that's what I do, and I'm damn good at it. Measurements needed to be taken, first of all, to get even the most basic layout and understanding of what we were going to be excavating. Otherwise, we might end up drilling through the floor of the security office, instead of the casino vault. The problem was, you couldn't just go into the casino with a tape measure and start taking notes. I had to get creative. One morning, after making a series of initial measurements, I painted a white line on my bicycle tire, then rode around the outside of the casino counting the revolutions on my wheel. By the end of the day, using these measurements and the information from Blake's man on the inside, we had our exact coordinates for the vault. Pretty clever, right? The next step was establishing a base camp and a drilling location. Blake helped me scout out nearby buildings that were for rent or lease, and we found one which was ideal in an old warehouse a few blocks away from the casino. Using a dummy corporation Blake had set up, we rented the place and began to dig. Little by little, I made my way into the nearby sewer system. From there, we'd make another hole, which would lead us into the vault. The sewers would act as our escape route, allowing us to evade police and pop up a few blocks away right beside the getaway vehicle. One morning, Blake told me he had finished assembling the crew. We got together at the rented building to discuss our plans and go over the operation. There was Gas, the street racer. He had a reputation for his flatulence, but also for fast driving, quick instincts, and he had a long resume as a getaway man. He could drift with the best of them and routinely won pink slips in late-night street races, acquiring cars which he then sold to upgrade his own ride. If he gave you a lift somewhere, though, it was bound to be a smelly journey. Our lockman was none other than Slim Fingers Pete, a notorious locksmith and safecracker. After learning to pick locks from his father growing up, Pete owned his own locksmith and vault-building business for 30 years. Eventually, though, he got tired of the low wages and rude customers and took up a life of crime. He began making a name for himself as a modern-day Robin Hood, stealing jewels, cash, and priceless artifacts from the various rich neighborhoods around town. But he dressed shabbily, and the rumor was he donated the stolen cash to charity. Who knew if that was really true, though? Lastly, we had our demolitions expert, C4 Cindy, as she was known around town, or as she preferred to be addressed, Cinders. After 2 tours of duty serving in the Special Forces, Cinders was tossed out for insubordination, given a dishonorable discharge and sent packing from the military. This resulted in a lifelong vendetta from that day forward with every authority figure, especially if they were U.S. military. Still, she mostly wore camouflage and had a bright pink buzz cut. Every crew needed a comedian to ease the tension, and Cinders took on that role from day one, although she needed reminding sometimes to keep things serious when it mattered. The five of us sat around a table in front of a large chalkboard as Blake began to lay out the plan. We were in our rented warehouse a few blocks away from the casino, on the main level away from the sewer smell which had taken over the basement, all thanks to my drilling. The stink was getting worse, though, and it was spreading to the main level now. I got a few glares from the other team members who knew what I was up to down there. Still, it was all a necessary part of the plan. All right, eyes up front, everybody. Yeah, I know the smell is a distraction, but I'm going over the operation for the first time with all of you, so just listen and save your questions for the end. Yes, teacher, Cinders said sarcastically, leaning forward and putting her chin in her hands like a precocious child. Cinders, if you want to get to blow something up later, you better start taking this seriously. I am, she pouted. But then after seeing his dead-set expression, she relaxed her posture, leaned back, and spoke in her grown-up voice. Okay, fine, I'm listening. Blake took a deep breath and steeled himself for the grand unveiling. I was the only one in the room who knew all the details, since he'd practiced this presentation with me the night before. All right, listen up. Now this plan is a bit complex, so bear with me. Yes, your job is going to be the simplest. Monday, 0400 hours, you're going to be parked on the east side of Park Street, 6 blocks from the casino. Whatever vehicle you boost needs to be big enough to seat all 5 of us. Plus, we're going to need cargo space and room for the cash. So I'm thinking of something like a work van. Preferably discreet, white in color, no markings. Great, so you want me to steal a boring, slow piece of shit? He muttered, grinning. Yeah, no problem. Boring and slow means the cops probably aren't going to notice it. Make sure you steal some plates, too. Somebody who isn't going to notice they're missing. This ain't my first rodeo, Blake. This shit goes without saying. Yeah, just making sure. This one's going to come down to all the details. That's why I picked you guys. I know you're the best. We all waited for him to continue, and he looked at the chalkboard and started to write things out and draw diagrams, expanding on the execution of the plan. Pete, Cinders, and I will be down in the sewers. Brian will be up on street level with the police scanner, keeping an eye on the front of the casino, keeping in touch with our man on the inside. All of this will guarantee that if someone finds out what we're doing, we'll get plenty of notice so we can escape. Everyone glared at me, hearing that I would be safely up on street level while they were down in the sewers getting their hands dirty. Brian has been the one in the sewer drilling, doing all the hard work, all the dangerous shit up until now. So that's part of the reason why he gets to be on lookout duty. Which comes with its own risks as well. Anybody got a problem with that? Blake, the undisputed leader of the group, looked around at the others, sensing the shift in the room. It would have been easy to read into it as nepotism, but the three of them softened a few seconds later, and Cinders smiled, laughing out loud. Hell, no wonder you stink so bad, Brian. I feel sorry for you having to deal with gases, nasty shits down in the sewers. That eased the tension, and everyone laughed. Okay, settle down. Let's get through this, and then we can make fun of gas more afterwards. You can all tell me your concerns. You got it, boss, Cinders said, doing a sarcastic military salute. So here's the part you're going to like, Cinders. You're going to blow a big-ass hole in the bottom of the vault. And we're going to use this ladder contraption devised by Brian to climb in. I stood up to show them the prototype I'd designed, holding the nondescript cylinder in my hands. Okay, so one person will hold the remote while the other one throws this up through the hole. Once it's inside the vault, the person with the remote's going to hit the button to engage the stabilizer bar. Demonstrating how it worked, I hit a red button on the remote control and the thing expanded instantly, like a two-ended lightsaber made of steel. It's kind of heavy, so just watch out it doesn't fall on you. It might take a few attempts to throw it up through the hole, but it's doable. I've tried it. Whoever wants to be the one making the throw will have plenty of time to practice, too. My hands are as sure as they come, said Pete. I'll toss it up through the gap on the first go. Practice or no practice. Let's go with a bit of practice, just to be safe, guys, Blake said, continuing with the plan. Once we're all up in the vault, we'll only have a few minutes. Pete, you're going to go in first. You get started on the lockboxes. Cinders, you'll be doing the same on the other end of the vault using the control explosives. Whatever you do, you have to keep it quiet. Aw, so no big booms, she protested, stomping her feet on the floor a few times, going back to her childish alter ego. No big booms. Only little miniature booms. Then you can blow up as much shit as you want afterwards. A couple $1,000,000 will buy you a lot of explosives. Trust me. Cinders smiled, looking off wistfully. Ooh, a whole private island. Just for me to blow up. What if someone hears something and comes in to investigate? I asked, playing devil's advocate. Blake and I had gone over this before, so I knew he had a great plan. I just wanted to prove it to everybody else. That's the best part. There's going to be a fire alarm test happening at the same time, so nobody's going to be able to hear anything through the thick steel door. And if they do, well, our guy on the inside will be in charge of the cameras, so he'll just tell them everything looks fine, not to be worried. A fake camera loop's going to be playing the whole time, so if anyone asks to see, he can show them. What if that doesn't convince them? Pete asked. What happens if they insist they want to see inside for themselves? Well, we got exactly 4 minutes to clear out. That's how long it takes to open the vault. And by then we'll be long gone, vanished in the maze of sewers beneath the casino. Everyone nodded, and Blake continued telling us the plan, but it was all straightforward after that. We all realized it was going to be challenging, but manageable. What we didn't know was that Blake wasn't telling us the whole plan. I didn't even know what he was up to as much as I thought I did. When the big day came, I was supposed to be sitting in front of the casino as the lookout man. But Blake came down with a stomach bug, and he looked pale as a ghost after throwing up all night. He was shaky and on the verge of passing out every time he stood up, but he insisted on going ahead with the operation. I did what any other big brother would do. I volunteered to switch places with him. You stay in the van, okay, Blake? I'm the only one who knows this plan as well as you do. And if you're going to insist on going through with this today, then I'm going to insist on you staying in the van and being the lookout. He reluctantly agreed, and that was how I ended up being the one down in the sewers, standing alongside Cinders and Pete. The three of us watched through our protective goggles as the ultra-bright white light burned a hole clean through the steel. Molten metal dripped down bright red, burning a hole in the cement by our feet. I took a step back. Cinders looked at me and laughed, the liquid steel splashing just inches away from her toes, reflecting red in her welding goggles. Careful, Brian, she said, grinning. The floor is lava. After a hole had been built through the steel, Cinders sprayed the blackened edges with foam to cool them down for our entrance. Then Pete took the steel contraption I designed and threw it up through the hole, with just enough gentle spin so that it turned sideways at the peak of his toss. Then I hit the red button on the remote control, engaging the anchors. A steel rod shot out of either end of the cylinder, locking the device in place. I hit another button, and the rope ladder, which was concealed inside, popped out, unraveling until it reached the floor. Nice throw, Pete, I said, clapping our locksmith on the back. Hey, nice job yourself. That's one hell of a contraption. I might just need to borrow it for my next job. Cinders began climbing the ladder, and I followed after her, into the sound of the ringing fire alarm. So far, the plan was going perfectly, and there was no sign of anyone having heard our entrance. After this, you might not need to do any more jobs, Pete. Once we got up into the vault, the three of us began to giggle softly like children in a toy store. There was a stack of cash at the center of the vault, far surpassing anything we could have imagined. There had to be tens of millions of dollars, if not more. Forget the bloody lockboxes, Pete said over the alarms. This here's more than we need. Let's take it, get the hell out of here. This is where things started getting weird. I agreed with Pete that the lockboxes weren't worth the trouble with a huge pile of cash sitting there. But Cinders didn't say anything. Instead, she went into a corner and started quietly pulling things out of her demolition bag. What are you doing, Cinders? Help us load up the cash. Fuck the boxes. She just ignored me, starting to set small explosives on a few of the lockbox doors. They were lined up on one wall like safety deposit boxes in a bank vault. Cinders, we don't need to risk the explosions. We've got more than enough right here. But she just kept ignoring me. Instead, she just attached some cable to the small explosives on the lockbox doors and unwound the spool of it, stepping away from them. "Let her work," Blake said into my earpiece. "You get the money, let her do her thing." "Why? Why risk it when we—" A small explosion went off, interrupting me, and the room filled with a small, hazy cloud of white smoke. I shot a look over my shoulder, furrowing my brow. It didn't make sense. Why were they taking chances when we had so much guaranteed cash? Unless they knew something I didn't. I didn't have time to stay distracted, so I kept piling money into the bags we'd brought, throwing them down into the sewers below. We were nearly half finished. "Shit, somebody heard that," Blake said in my earpiece. "You guys gotta get out of there now. My guy can't stop them. They're coming in right now." A noise came from the vault door like a large steel plate being turned. "Damn it, Cinders!" She was still ignoring me, pulling something out of the lockboxes. I filled one more bag and then told Pete to start heading down the ladder. We were leaving a lot of cash behind. I went over to Cinders and tapped her on the shoulder. "You just screwed up this whole heist. What the hell were you thinking? I told you to leave the lockboxes alone." Instead of turning around, she just kept staring at the thing in her hand. A vial full of green liquid which she had extracted from the lockbox. I noticed a cut on Cinder's finger where a piece of broken glass had pierced her skin, and then I saw the green liquid dripping from her hand. The vial had cracked in the explosion, and whatever was inside of it was now seeping into Cinder's bloodstream. "Cinders? Are you okay?" "I think you should put that down. We don't know what it is." Much to my surprise, she actually listened to me. With her fingers shaking badly, she set the vial of diminishing green liquid back into the lockbox, and a little puddle began to form beneath it. "I know what it is, Brian. I've known all along. That's the whole reason I agreed to this heist. Somebody paid me to extract that vial from the safe. The same person who paid your brother to set this all up. You really think he just happened to have a man on the inside? You think he just happened to get sick today? No. He was scared. Scared of this shit. He didn't want to die." This was all beginning to upset me. I could feel my blood boiling. "What the hell are you talking about, Cinders? My brother would never set me up." "Blake? Blake, tell her." There was a deep sigh in my earpiece as my brother hesitated. "I'm sorry, Brian. It wasn't supposed to break. The vial was supposed to be sturdy enough to survive a natural disaster. This was never supposed to happen." The vault door was unlocking, and I realized we had wasted too much time. I began to hustle back towards the ladder, telling Cinders to leave the vial behind. When she turned around, I didn't like what I saw. Purple-black veins spread inwards from the periphery of her eyes. Her pupils were turning crimson as she opened her mouth, and drool began to pour out from her lower lip. She growled, making a low sound in her throat like a dog. Her eyes were fixed on me as I backed away. But then the vault door opened and all hell broke loose. A few security guards drew their pistols as they entered, fanning out and moving towards the two of us. I had my foot on the ladder and was about to climb down when the closest one persuaded me to stop. "Freeze! Don't move!" he yelled at me, his pistol pointed at my face. Without many other options, I raised my hands in submission. It looked as if our flawless plan had failed. The guard came over to me with handcuffs at the ready, but Cinders wasn't responding to the other guards as well as I was. "Hey, I said to get your hands up in the air, lady. I'm not going to ask you again." Suddenly she raced towards one of the men, growling and drooling as she ran. He screamed at her to stop, but she seemed not to hear, instead lunging at him like a rabid dog as he squeezed the trigger. No, get off me!" he howled as the gun discharged into the air over and over again, his shots wild and aimless. The bullets began to ricochet around the vault, one of them hitting the security guard closest to me. He dropped his gun, yelping in pain as he grabbed his shoulder. "What the hell, Dan?" he yelled, and then saw what was happening and raced over to assist the other two guards. Cinders quickly turned her attention to them, raking her nails across one guard's face, scratching his eyes and blinding him in one rapid motion. Then she swept her other hand across his face from the other direction, alternating hands and scratching at his face over and over again in a frenzied attack. By the end of it, he was in a shuddering heap on the floor, bleeding out. The guard who had been closest to me was the only one of the three left, and he started firing his gun at her without any further warning. Bullets hit Cinder square in the chest, in the ribcage, in the neck, and in her shoulder, but she made no response. Instead, she leapt up onto him like a tiger. Her teeth sunk into his neck, ripping out his throat in one quick bite. He pushed and clawed at her face desperately, gurgling as blood bubbled up from the wound, his skin turning paler. That was when I realized I hadn't been moving. I needed to get away or I would be next. I started climbing down the ladder, my eyes darting around the vault room as I went, taking a final look at the chaos. Just before the room disappeared from my view, I saw one of the dead security guard's eyes snap open, purple-black veins spreading inwards from the edges of his eyes, towards his crimson-red pupils. That was when I realized what that shit really was. Stuff in the vial. It was a fucking zombie virus. And we just released it into the wild. With startling speed, the guard rose to his feet and came running my way. I stumbled down the rope ladder 2 and 3 rungs at a time, too scared to move safely. My heart was pounding fast as my feet slipped and I slid down the rest of the way, landing badly on my ankle and rolling it. I cried out in pain, looking up at the hole to see if anyone was coming. Instead of climbing down, the security guard fell down through the blasted hole in the vault floor, landing on the cement sewer floor with a hard crack, his leg breaking clean in half. A bone was jutting out through one side in a sharp splinter. But this didn't stop him. He got up and began to lurch and hop towards me, dragging his splintered femur and clawing desperately at the air just in front of me as I backed away. I got to my feet and started running, the adrenaline numbing the pain of my hurt ankle, but not entirely. Each step was agony as I raced to catch up with Pete, who was already 100 yards down the tunnel. Eventually, he stopped and waited for me to catch up, sensing that I was injured. "What the hell happened back there? Where's Cinders?" he asked, looking wildly over my shoulder. "Run!" I screamed. "Forget Cinders, she's dead. They're all dead!" This only seemed to confuse him further, and he stayed where he was as I ran past him, grabbing his arm, yelling at him to keep moving. "What the hell are you talking about? She can't be dead. I just saw her. We can't just leave her in there." "Run! They're fucking zombies now. They're coming for us." "Are you fucked in the head?" I didn't bother arguing with him any further, since just then Cinders appeared out of the darkness behind him, racing toward us with her red and purple eyes ablaze with hunger. Spittle clung to her face and dribbled down her chin, her teeth snapping like a rabid dog as she ran like an Olympic sprinter straight at us. Several infected guards were behind her, trailing slowly compared to her speed. They were injured from her attacks and from their fall down the ladder, but she was healthy and full of inhuman speed thanks to whatever was in that vial. It was making her fast, and it was making her mean. Homicidal. I couldn't help but stare in terrified fascination as she leapt onto Pete and dove face first into his neck with her teeth snapping ferociously. Like a hungry, stray dog after cornering a rabbit, there was no mercy or remorse. Only terror and shrill screaming until the sounds of that cut off abruptly. Blood sprayed into the air and gushed from his wounds onto the concrete and down into the sewer water. I stood transfixed, watching as she tore him to pieces. Eventually, I snapped out of it and ran, leaving the bag's money behind, no longer caring about them at all, only wanting to get away. Only wanting to run as fast and far as possible from that place. The sounds of footsteps behind me grew louder as the ladder came into focus in the distance. I tried not to look back over my shoulder, knowing that would only waste precious seconds, but I couldn't help it. I glanced back to see Cinders was in pursuit, trailing behind me a ways, but gaining fast. I didn't stand a chance of making it up the ladder before she got to me. I realized that, but continued to run, too terrified to give up. "Duck!" I heard someone scream from up ahead, and I looked to see a dim light above the ladder where the manhole cover had been opened. Someone was standing in the sewers up ahead, aiming a gun in my direction. It was my brother, Blake. I kept running until I was close enough for him to get a proper shot off, then I ducked out of the way just as the explosion of his gun reverberated through the sewers. He shot Cinders again and again, each time hitting her square in the chest. And yet she kept coming. He shot her 3 more times, finally landing a shot on her right temple, stunning her. Cinders collapsed to the ground, a bleeding hole in the side of her head exposing her skull. I started running towards Blake again, and a moment later she was up on her feet, moving marginally slower now. "Let's go!" Blake screamed. "Get up the ladder. Do you have it? Do you have the vial?" I started climbing the ladder, shouting down at him. "No, the vial broke. It's gone. Just forget about it. Let's get out of here." Continuing up the ladder, I thought he was following me, but when I got to the top, I climbed out and looked down to see he was still in there, in the sewers, staring up at me. "Blake, what are you doing? We gotta go. Get up here." He let out a deep sigh, looking remorseful. "I'm not going anywhere. This was the worst case scenario. I can't just leave. I have to try to stop this somehow, Brian. You go. You get as far away from this city. Get as far away as you can. No matter what you do, just run. Don't look back. They'll be coming for you, but they'll be coming for me first." "What are you talking about, Blake? Get up here, please." I realized I was crying as I looked down at him in the darkness, my tears dripping down to land at his feet. He looked straight ahead again and began to fire his pistol, letting out a howling war cry. An instant later, an undead Cinders dove into him and brought him to the ground. Gas had to get out of the van to put the manhole cover back on, sealing the scene beneath the ground. I wasn't able to tear my eyes away from what I was seeing down there, but I did hear the sounds of it, even through the manhole cover. The sounds of my brother dying will ring in my ears every night when I fall asleep. For the rest of my life, I'm sure. My younger brother is getting eaten by zombies, I thought to myself in amazement. And I always thought those things only existed in the movies and on TV. Leave it to mankind to get creative with chemical warfare. Gas dragged me into the van and drove away from there. He seemed to know what was happening, as if Blake had let him and Cinders in on the secret. I'll never forgive him for that for as long as I live. I don't think that will be very long, though. I don't think any of us have much time left. And I'm talking about humanity in general. A new virus is spreading in the sewers beneath Las Vegas. It's only a matter of time before it surfaces again. And when it does, it won't matter how far we run. It'll be coming for us all. This story was written by me, and a variation of it previously appeared on the Dr. Nosleep podcast. If you want to hear more stories written by me and other great authors, check out his podcast and YouTube channel, where he also shares high-quality horror animations and audio works. Links can be found in the description. Today's video was supported by patrons like Mark from Earth, Crimson Muse, Joy Burton, Diane Showers, Mark Zual, Cheryl James, Pick Your Sticker, Teddy Dog, Clue 404, Mamakato, Dante Kincaid, Zarin Ray, Angela Donovan, Blairy 50, Devin Kyle, Timothy Baird, Ajeti, Bert Turner, Bajani Espinal, Michael Pierce, Big Joe, Carrie Harkonnen, and LaDonna Spivey. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Grupe Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward. And if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in the next Hollow's End story. characters have already started appearing in stories, so check that out if you're interested. Links to join are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great night.